So here we have our WDD 131 folder, and I did put a Ponder folder inside of that to contain all of the things that we do in class together. So let's go ahead and add a new file here. And we'll do the shortcut, the exclamation tab or enter. That Visual Studio Code will give us a little boilerplate here, and you'll notice we do have a few meta tags that came in. I'm going to turn my word wrap on so we can see all those. And I'll always go and change my title right off the bat. All right. Let's go to our Ponder and grab up some code. Here's a couple of meta tags that did not come in that I think are important. There are many more than this. This one is the description and the author meta tags. And you can go ahead and change that to your name. And while we're there, let's bring in all the code that's going to go inside of our body tag so that we can play around with that. So we do have a div with the ID of content. If you remember from 130, that was to contain everything on our page so that it was separate from the body. Therefore, we can give different CSS to the body versus all the content of our page, make it different widths, background colors, whatever. And we have an H1, should only have one of those per page. We also have a paragraph tag here. We have an HR, which is called a horizontal rule. Let me show you what that is. Sometimes it's kind of to break up different sections of your page. So that's what this line is here. It's called the horizontal rule. And it's just basically just an open tag HR. Okay, then we have an image that's coming in hot linked, just so we all have the same image quickly. Remember, hot linking is not a great idea because you don't own this picture and it could be taken down at any time. Plus, you probably shouldn't be using pictures that are not your own, but this one is my own. And then I do have, I'll make sure you always have an alt with your images. Just a quick review here. We then have a div that contains all three of these topics. We have an H2 to go with each topic, a unordered list, which means we're going to get bullets for each of our list items. And we have given the ID of topics to the div that surrounds all of this. It ends here. And notice the indentation is important because then we can kind of see the beginning and ending tags really quickly. And we also have classes for each of our unordered lists, our ULs, of the same class name. Remember, you cannot repeat on the same page another ID with the value topic, but you can repeat class names again and again on the same page. So we kind of know that we'll probably be doing the same CSS on all of these. So therefore, we've given them a class name. But as we'll learn quickly in JavaScript, because of the things like select element by ID, it is expecting only one to come back by that name. So make sure when you use ID that I could only give an ID of topics one time on this page. I could give another ID, but I'd have to name it something else. Okay, a little review there. We got some new meta tags, but this should all be very much a review from 130. Now let's go into some of those CSS selectors. So how do we link up a CSS file to our HTML? Remember, it is the link tag. We have two attributes that we use with this. The first one is href, or hypertext reference. Where is our CSS file located? We're going to call our CSS file the same name as our HTML, but with .css, just so that we can organize our Ponder folder easily. The other attribute you do need is the rel, or how is this file related to my HTML? It is a style sheet telling what type of file it is. And let's go ahead and make that file inside the Ponder folder and meta. And there we're ready to start our CSS. Now remember, this external CSS is preferred over any sort of embedded or inline CSS in our HTML. All right, so now we can start looking at some of the CSS we could use for this file. I like to just kind of start at how the order that my HTML comes in. You can alphabetize it, you can sort it however you want, you can give a lot of good comments. Remember, a comment is going to look like this. So CSS, selector, review, I don't know. Or if you are different parts of your page, like if this was the header that I was looking at, like maybe I'd put header here, and then later when I'm down to the footer, I put footer. Anyway, there's lots of good ways to organize your CSS because it can get really, really long. But I'm going to start with body because that's kind of my first element, kind of the big granddaddy element of my page. And I'm going to go ahead and just give it a background color of a gray and save that. And you can see that come into effect right away. All right. And now let's go ahead and increase the font size of our entire HTML page by putting it into the body. And so I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger. Maybe I do 20 pixels. I think 16 is the default there. So it's a little bit bigger. I like that. And now I want to go ahead and take care of centering the page, like the content on the page itself. I can't center the body itself, but I can center that content div, but the div with the ID of content. So I'll go in here, and remember, when you're targeting an ID in your HTML, you use the hashtag and then the name of the ID. I could have said just div, but then I have other divs that maybe I don't want this to happen to. So that is why we use IDs and classes to give them another alias or another name so that we can be very specific about what we are targeting. All right, so I'm going to make sure it never gets bigger than maybe 60% of the page. I'm also going to give it a border. And the border is a shortcut property that wants three things. It wants how big is the border, what kind of a border is it? Is it dashed or dotted or solid? And then what color is the border? So now we have a border around this. And now we can go about getting it centered. Now there's different ways to center things. If you want to center a block level element, you can use, as long as it's got a width and it's not as wide as the whole page, because we did give it a width, so we've got 40% room to play with, we can use margin 0 auto. The 0 is the top and bottom. We don't really care if there's space on the top and bottom. We might come back and change that, but we automatically want to give the left and right equal amount of space. So I can save that, and we see that it centered that on the page. Okay, I also don't like how close it is to the border, so I'm going to give a little bit of padding, and that's going to be on the inside of my element. Okay, so just a refresher, remember, you can always use the inspect tool. And I'm going to stop here so that this video doesn't get too long, and we're going to continue on with the inspect tool in the next one.